really, it was once I got into novels that I really was like, no, edit and edit and edit and edit and edit till it's ready, rather than just get it out in the world.
Welcome to Angle on Writing, a podcast about writing, publishing, and book marketing. Greetings, writers. I am happy today because I am here with novelist Norm Thoeming. Did I get it right?
Did you say roaming? It's TH. It's a TH sound. You can't.
Thoeming?
Thoeming. Thoeming.
Thoeming. I put an R in there. I'm sorry.
This will bring us to that point of why a pen name.
Oh, well, there you go. But first, can you tell us how you discovered your writing talent?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so I came from a background of I suppose I started writing maybe even in high school, but never seriously and never really studied anything about it. Other than somewhere in Indiana landfill, there's a handwritten early novel that no one should ever read. There's a reason it's in a landfill. But through college, I did study playwriting and screenwriting. And when I followed some dreams out to Los Angeles, I pursued TV writing and sketch comedy writing and screenplays. And then it wasn't until my 30s where I had written a screenplay that a friend and I, we had done some short films and some various projects together in the golden days of independent film. And he had pitched me this idea. He's like, "Oh, I'd love to do a movie with that." And I'm like, "Great, I will outline the heck out of that and I'll write it." And so I wrote this crime, well, it's a thriller, and I took it back to him, and he's like, it's not really what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, but I worked so hard on that screenplay and did so much research that I decided to novelize it. And and that kind of was the jumping off point where I really realized that I loved novel length fiction. I loved reading it. I'd always consumed it, but I really gravitated towards it. And so that started my tumbling head over tails journey into writing and the world of professional writing, if you will, or at least, struggling for decades, and toward that goal. And so somewhere way too early, I'm like, I'm ready to representation after I'd finished my novel and ignored some wonderful guidance from several published authors. And I'm like, I'm ready to pitch to agents. And I looked, I just scoured the internet and I'm like, oh, there's a writers conference right up the street, that happens every year in Santa Barbara. I'm going to go there and pitch to agents. And of course I got there, and like many first time novelists and people jumping into the world of traditional publishing, I had a quick awakening that I was neither ready nor standing out from the crowd. But what I did learn, what I did get, is the exposure to a lot of working writers of various levels of skill, and found really how much of a welcoming environment it is, like how supportive. And having been in Hollywood for some time, it was very different when someone thought you were good and you said, "Hey, would you ever talk to your agent about me or something?" They'd be like, "Sure," rather than someone in Hollywood who'd be like, "Well, you're kind of my type, so I don't want to take you into my agent because we're too similar and I'd hate to lose my job." I found that the world of novel writing was much more, maybe it's because the stakes were lower and the time period much longer, that people who are other novelists really are helpful and pleasant and wonderful. I mean, there's certainly some horrible people in there too, but like generally it's a wonderful community of people who just want each other to succeed and to make some cool art.
That's true. So what year was that?
The first year I attended the Santa Barbara Writers Conference would have been 2011. And this is now 2026 as we record this. So yeah, that was the first year. And then I went back the next year, determined. I'd made some friends and had some more of a writers group. And so I kind of learned a great deal. And so I kept polishing and kept polishing and kept polishing. And then somewhere I found an offer for representation from an agent. And so then I worked on that first manuscript with that agent. And then eventually it was ready for publication or at least submission. And somewhere at that point, life had a big twist. And I went through a major upheaval, if you will, divorce. And so following that, as any major life event will kind of remind you of who you want to be, perhaps, hopefully, and how much time we have in this world. So I really doubled down and I started a whole new project and I pulled back that original novel from submission and ended up with more representation, additional representation. At that point, I had come back to the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, determined and a lot more knowledgeable of a new thing I wanted to pitch. And I happened to secure another agent or at least offer representation. And then I worked with that agent. And then I think it was also submitting that first manuscript. And then we stopped, got some great rejections. And in the meantime, I had written a new project in a quarter of the time of that original tenure. I mean, the original manuscript I wrote probably was a 7-year process, from screenplay to ready for publication or at least for submission. Um, and so then in the meantime, I had a new book that I wanted to try, and I wrote that one, and it ended up being ready for publication, and it was submitted, and yay, I got published.
Wow. So do you think okay, so did you when you were working in Hollywood, did you have you had screenplays? Did they get picked up or
Nope, never. Again,
yeah.
I had done some short films with a friend,
Yeah.
but those we made. We definitely made
Yes.
those, and one or two. I will say before the novel, I was probably an 80 percenter on everything I wanted to do. Um, when I moved to town, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a comedy writer, and I wanted to be in a rock band. And I did all of those to a degree, but never past a level of discomfort. Like I never stepped out of my comfort zone and really put myself out there for huge rejection. Some of my screenplays placed in fact, the screenplay that was the basis for the original novel did place in a contest and like in the top 10 of a contest or top 5 or something like that, which was very, exciting for me. And at one point I was hip pocketed, a writing partner and I were hip pocketed for sitcom type stuff. And we, wrote some pilots and almost got hired on some stuff. And then he left writing completely and moved out of town. But it wasn't until I really dove into the world of the novel that I really went for it 100%. And so, same thing with acting. And I still do comedy. I still am an improviser, but being an improviser, like I do long form improv and have since for the last 30 years. I'm actually part of a show that's been running for over 25 years in Los Angeles. Uh, but even then, that was always my comfort levels. Make it up on the spot and then don't try to refine it. So, really, it was once I got into novels that I really was like, no, edit and edit and edit and edit and edit till it's ready rather than just get it out in the world. Like make sure it's ready because no one else is really going to refine it for you.
Well, I can see how that could be because I know that with writing a novel, you have to really kind of get into the head of the character, more like with the acting than with the screenwriting, whereas the screenwriting probably helped with more of a plotting type of exercise.
Yeah, that's true. I've used both skills, and I still sort of rely on them throughout. So when I had written that first reverse adaptation or a novelization of a screenplay, that was great. I mean, I had 100-page outline. Sorry, my light is flashing. Is that strobing anyone? Is it killing anyone? Okay, I apologize for
Well,
anyone who just had a.
isn't that like part of the mystery? And we could always put one of those little disclaimers. I've heard those now on TV where They have
Yeah.
flashing lights. My yeah,
Some moderate strobing based on
yeah,
a perhaps a fluorescent bulb,
yeah,
or the end of my LED. But
yeah.
so what I found is the second manuscript that I really finished, and the one that ended up being published first, I wrote way too long. I mean, it was someone's like, if you write 1,000 words a day for 90 days, you've got a full book. Well, I wrote for 160 days. So, so I had way more book than needed. And what I did when I read all of that was then I wrote the screenplay of it, which, like you said, really distilled it down to the core story and the plot points needed for that story. And then I went back and edited accordingly. From the acting side, I try to, when I read through, I try to break down my characters almost as they would be broken down for a script, as in size and importance, and then of course their language and their voice, like each character's individual voice, um, so that I don't have a bunch of extra people in there. There are people like maybe 5 characters who do the exact same thing. Like, why make one character a really good character and cut the other 4? So that has been something I definitely rely on. And I've just finished a new manuscript, and I will probably need to make a screenplay out of it just to see what I can cut.
That is a very, very good exercise, and that's great. And I mean, that's something that I've kind of considered too. It's because, I want to write a play, but I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll write the short story first and then make it into a play. But so those things can really help, I think, with the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Everyone's like, oh, do you have a set process? And the answer is it changes constantly, but I definitely have things that really work for me. And that's kind of what I've embraced telling people would be what gets you there. Like, great, if it is a play first, then make that, like, see it in your world first, and then put it into fiction form or prose when you're ready.
So your work in Hollywood and screenwriting and stuff, does that have anything to do with why you decided to go with a pen name for the novels?
I'm afraid not. So when I was first offered a traditional publishing contract, the publisher, the editor, acquiring editor came back and was like, "Would you consider a pen name?" A, my original series was a female journalist and modern times, and it did involve um, some trigger warning worthy content, and that wasn't necessarily the issue, but they said they wanted a gender neutral name. And also they're like, no one knows how to pronounce your last name, to which I'm like, well, it's not, people aren't going around constantly talking about their favorite authors by last name, but I was open to it my whole life, having heard restaurants mispronounce our family name, or at coffee, that wasn't a problem for me, but it was kind of fun. So ultimately what I did was I made a list of names I thought I would respond to, combinations of my initials, combinations of my wife's initials. My wife has a separate last name than me. Her last name is Stevens. So there was some like Norman Stevens, or, there were plenty of things. We ended up, between my wife and my agent and I, we ended up narrowing it down to a list of 10. And then I cross-referenced those against known authors or sexual offenders, mass criminals, any sort of thing, just in case. Yeah. And, 1 or 2, and then I narrowed it down to 3. And then we went back to the publisher and like, here are the 3. And they're like, oh, August Norman, like, perfect. And I'm like, great. Made a website, bought some URLs, started creating August Norman's world. And then once we were in with the first book, I was in my, edits with my publisher. And then somewhere like maybe 6 months into it, when I was already supposed to be working on the second book in the series, they're like, hey, we've been thinking that August isn't that gender neutral, or at least it skews more toward male. Again, we don't need you to say you're not male, but, people are going to look at your photo and understand. But I'm just like, oh, no, money has been spent, time and money and wealth. And not to mention, I found, I kind of proved to them that of, say, people under the age of 35 at the time, there were actually a fair number of female Augusts compared to the past, what they might have been thinking of, August Strindberg or whatever. Um, so yeah, the pen name, it became a thing. Luckily, it had Norman in it, so I'm able to respond to it. It was really fun getting to try to make a signature. My handwriting is already abysmal. My signature as Norm Thoeming is very much a forgery of my father's, who's also Norm Thoeming. So, like, my whole childhood was me trying to forge my dad's signature. So it became that. But when it was like, hey, you're going to sign some books as August Norman, it was like, yes, I am. Okay. So I think my wife still has a copy of the various pages of me working on my signature to get it the same. Um, yeah, that was a just one of those things you never think of necessarily when you're writing a book.
So you think you may go with a different name in the future, maybe?
There's some realistic publishing aspects to it. The books that I had traditionally published, the first one sold well, the second one did not, which meant the series with that publisher was not extended. And as I look to other publishers, you wrestle with that question: will they count poor sales against looking at a new book? And sort of the answer to that is, well, if you go out with a different name, I mean, eventually they'll know and everyone will know. But technically, if you go out with a different name, then it's not quite the same. It's a dumb industry thing that was true 5 years ago, and I don't know if it's true now, but I'll find out.
Well, you're in good company, with authors like Mark Twain, using pseudonyms. But and then they also do the stuff where they republish a novel under a different title. And there's
Right.
yeah, the business is just like can get kind of wacky. And with agents and stuff, do you still have the same agent that you started out with?
So there was the original agent, and then we parted ways. And then there was the agent who was with me for the publishing of the two books, Eric Myers. He has since retired. And so I have, and all, so glad he could retire. He's living out his days in wonderful ways, all kinds of travel and good food. Um, but I have relationships with some agents, and when this manuscript is ready, I will start the process again. Luckily, I know more people now. I know a lot of authors who write in the same genre as me. I know some agents, some of which I've kept up ties with, and we'll just see. But I will be going back to, polishing a query, getting my pitch ready, and getting stuff out there. I don't know that it ever goes away, but my imposter syndrome now is sort of over. Meaning,
Good,
I've gotten to a point where it's like I don't care. Um,
good.
One of the things at this year's writers conference, I will be co-teaching a seminar with an agent, with a literary agent, and part of the seminar that I always wished I'd had is literally things I'd wish I'd known once you get into the business side of it. Of like, oh, sure, there's the getting the agent part, but then once someone actually says yes, what happens? Not just when the agent says yes, but what happens when a publisher says yes. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, do you care about your contract? Because you should, and there are things to care about. And what's the size of your deal as far as a traditional publisher and their marketing schedule? Are you the A title of that month or even that week? Like if they do 4 books a month in that imprint, uh, or even 8 books a month and then imprint 2 every week, are you the A title or are you the B title? Like how much marketing are they going to give you? And if it's not the A title, how much marketing are you going to give yourself? Just things to be aware of. And what it's really taught me is how to know what your own success line is. If it's piles of money, well, that's a hard one for people to find. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But for me, it was to have a novel published and out there, and it's those little things you kind of have to set your own. What does success look like? Otherwise, you can still drive yourself crazy no matter how well you're doing or how well you're not doing.
I used to work for a literary agent, and uh, her thing is she would if a publisher accepted a manuscript, she'd call the author and say, "I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is you're getting published. The bad news is you're getting published."
It's so true because, and maybe it's like being a rock star, it's like, hey, you got a record deal. And then, here are the expectations of like, now you're going to tour for a year. And you're like, wait, what? I have a family and stuff. It's a wonderful problem to have, even limited success, but it's sort of just understanding what that could mean. I still meet a lot of people who are like, and then, you get to quit your job. I'm like, yeah. I know some people who have quit their job and are now full-time writers and they're bestsellers, and that's wonderful. They're very talented. That's not the reason they got to do that, but there's a little bit of a lightning strike in there of like, and then they found the right person, and then their representation found the right people and found the right readers. Um, so there's always that caveat of like, success for me is this. Anything else is golden, but and also, do you feel confident in your product, not product, your art, but also, are you okay with it becoming product? Like, I have a lot of friends who are very literary and definitely like, oh, I want it, no, I don't ever want to use quotation marks because Cormac McCarthy doesn't use quotation marks. You're like, yeah, he got to make that call at some point, like, he got to do that. Get yourself to that point where then you can say, cool, can we publish the paperback the way I originally wrote it without punctuation or, capital letters or attribution or whatever, um, there's still that world of getting in the door, there's still the gatekeepers of today. And now with AI, so much is a challenge for a whole new generation and the current generations, of what the gatekeepers are using, and how to get there, that you don't want anything to be the rejection, easy stuff like that. Like, where's your budge point? Like, what will you fold on? Like, for me, I didn't really care about the audio book of my first book because I never really listened to audiobooks. Um, but then when I did listen to that first audiobook, I'm like, crap, I should have fought for some more stuff. Like, I have a group of friends who are working voice artists, who constantly read books. For my second book, I was able to submit a list of three, and the publisher chose from those three, and I was very happy with the second audiobook. Um, so there, I guess a lot of that is what does success look like, and what's important to you to walk away feeling like you did the best thing possible.
So are you going to, in the future, are you going to stick with the mystery kind of thriller genre, or are you going to branch out, or do you find that putting a lot of comedy in there, would it ever fall into that category?
There
Um,
are certainly projects I have that I maybe hop some genres. This new manuscript is definitely, guys, I can't even call it a thriller, unfortunately. With the current definition of thriller, I mean, it's honestly, it's hard-boiled noir, it's hard-boiled modern noir, and I don't even know what the market for that is anymore. But like, when I break it down, if I have to say, well, a thriller is, what's going to happen, and the murder mystery is what happened, and noir is what happens to your soul when you compromise yourself. Like, it's definitely one of those. And yeah, I can build it into a series, but I kind of went at this one with no eye on the market, um, because it's the book I wanted to write, and whether it finds publication or not, that'll be a whole other thing. Um, I'm also currently editing a friend's book who has a posthumous editing, and it is very literary fiction and is very good. Um, but that's a whole world of, the dream is there for. I have some projects that are a little deeper and a little more literary, I suppose. But also, yeah, I mean, I write some comedic stuff, and I write. I'm not afraid of sci-fi or fantasy. I just haven't really gone there yet, but I love that stuff too. So I don't know. It it's kind of, I mean, I can't speak for every writer, but the stories I choose to tell are a reflection of how I'm feeling about the world at the time. And so much of how I feel at the world about the world at the time is based in crime, or at least the stakes of crime, the life and death stakes, and perhaps a compromised justice that may or may not exist in our world. So, I mean, my second manuscript ended up being about parenthood in a way, because at the time my wife and I had uh, begun the journey of becoming parents. And so I believe, yeah, the first book came out. The second book came out right after my first son had been born. And so a lot of that was that reflection of like, what is parenthood and what are the families we choose? And so again, for me, and because I've read so much crime, and I tend to think of the world in those terms.
Well, I see that you also are going to be, you mentioned doing some editing, and I see that you're also going to be co-facilitating a pirate workshop. Is that correct?
Yes, for those who have never attended the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, the pirate workshops are this wonderful tradition going back years and years, um, to when at first they all began as, everyone was so excited about writing that they all just gathered outside in the trees and started continuing to read stuff. Like the day was wonderful, but like, where do we go from here? Now they are much more structured, but there are two different rooms working of pirate workshops, though all the nights of the writers conference, and people can bring anything. They can bring anything and read and accept critique from a group of people. Now, obviously, um, this is all done tempered with honesty, tempered with kindness. After all, everyone who's coming, some people are seasoned authors, fiction, nonfiction, memoir, poetry, screenplays, everything. And some people, this is the first time they've ever read anything out loud or shared their work. Like their family doesn't even know. So it's a wonderful tradition of getting all sorts of critique, and either and dealing with that. I came up through the pirate sessions, and that's where I met some of my um, deepest friends, and one enemy. No, no enemies.
There's a
But
novel in that.
the great Lorelei Armstrong, when she was unable to return to the conference a year or two ago, told Grace it would be okay if Trey Dowell and I shared the responsibility, and it does take two of us to make up for her absence. And it's been a joy, because every time I listen and give critique, a lot of times I'm giving the critique I would give myself, and I listen to other people give critiques, and I hear all these wonderful points of view in a kind environment, unlike, say, I don't know, a master's writing program, or something people do in their 20s necessarily, where people are out to prove how good they are by insulting others. This has never been that. Um, so it's a great honor to get to hear people's work, and to hopefully contribute some guidance of my own. The advice I would give anyone who's never come to it is like, take if you hear a note 70% of the people who give you a note give you the same note, that is something to address, and you don't ever have to do it the way they tell you to do it. You don't ever have to chase someone else's approval for critique, um, because what you'll find, and this came from plenty of time in Hollywood, is like almost that same screenplay that led me to my first novel, was that like, here's the pitch. I'm like, well, I definitely came back and I wrote a story that not only fulfills that pitch but knocks it out of the park, and they're like, that's not what I was thinking. So that idea of chasing someone else's criticism is just it's an unwinnable goal. Um, but to hear criticism and listen, like, they're saying something and they're all saying something in the same ballpark, there's something I can address there. Um, so I think that's one of the big things I try to impart right away to people, is like, you don't have to do what we say. And nobody should be coming at this from a a point of contention or, trying to embarrass anyone. But if you hear something that rings true to a lot of people, then that is something to address.
Now that's great. That is very good advice. Do you have any other advice to people who are just starting out in their writing and maybe they have gone to a conference, maybe not, or maybe they're someplace where there's not one, but maybe they can get a group, or they're just starting to write.
Mm-hmm.
Any other
I would,
advice?
I would, again, this is advice I would have given my younger self. Um, if someone gives you the time to give you critique, that is, if you reach out and someone's like, hey, my mom's friend is an author and she said she'd read your book, and they do, and they give you notes, take those notes to heart. Don't, or at least take the gift of time and effort that someone is giving you and recognize it for what it is. Because too often when we first create something, we want to be told it's great. And then we don't hear anything unless someone says it's great. And so that idea of like rushing to complete, I have so many, once the books came out, a lot of people came up like, oh, I wrote a novel and I'm going to self-publish. I'm like, great. And then the thing is, I'm not saying anything bad about indie or self-publishing. There are so many great examples of why that's the perfect path. But what I am against is self-publishing just to get it out there. Like a lot of people are like, I wrote this book and now I published it and no one's reading it. And you're like, well, why did you publish it? You didn't even have an editor look at it. Like this is illegible, like AI is reading this and like, I don't know. I don't know what it's supposed to be. So I guess that is my advice is rush to don't rush to show people mediocre product. Not again, I hate to say the word product, but I mean art. But again, there are people who always just want to say, I wrote a book. You're like, that's amazing. But hopefully people read it and are engaged with it so that it becomes something they consider one of their favorite books on the shelf, something that really moves them, something that they are ready to critique and enjoy and share with others. And I mean, again, that comes back to why, what do I try to tell people that I wish I knew is kind of understand why you need to write. Like, what do you need to hear at the end of the day? If your parents never supported you, is it just, hey, you're great? And there is a way to get that through writing. Or is it you need to be known as one of the great authors of all time? Well, that's a whole other path. Or I just want to crank out 60,000 word sci-fi novellas every 6 months and then make a business out of it. And that is also acceptable. There are people who do that. I was at a different writers conference a couple of years back. And a man and his wife were this duo, this powerhouse duo, and they made like 400 grand a year. And they had these books and somebody did like, are they any good? And honestly, the guy's like, no, they're not. I write them so fast. They're all formulaic and bad. And it doesn't matter because that's why they were writing the books. So
Yeah.
I think it's that know what you want out of being an artist. And if it's commerce, there's that path. And if it's good work that you're proud of, there's certainly that path. So I would say don't rush to complete just because you want it to be done. On the other hand, the complete antithesis of that is don't wait 10 years to share your work with someone. Get it out to friends you trust and then authors you've met, and then workshop or edit and edit and edit, because this friend's book, and this is a dear friend of mine and mega talented Iowa Writers Workshop alum, like 10 years on this manuscript. And again, beautiful, but it could use some edits. And as I give notes on this manuscript, I'm giving him the notes I would have given him while he was alive, but now we don't get to work on it together. And same, I have a friend who's my wife's friend who came to us and like her husband passed, and he had this amazing guide to being a stand-up comic. And it's like, oh, this is great. And all, if you just modernize a few things. So it's a mix of don't rush to saying it's complete if it's not complete. but also don't don't put your life off. If this is your dream, pursue it. Um, because people don't tend to get discovered. Anyone who's discovered has already worked really hard to be in a place where their work is discovered. And that's one of the things I learned about Hollywood too, is that, do people get discovered by coming to a comedy show? Sure. But then it's constant work and it's constant reproving and reinvesting and going back into it.
Well, that is very, very great advice. And um,
I don't know if I always take it,
yeah,
but I can
well,
give it.
it's good. At least it's there, and it now it's out there in the podcast world. So you'll have to stand by it.
I do. I do. Or at
Well,
least August Norman does.
yeah, there you go. Well, thank you very much. This was very, very enlightening, and I look forward to seeing you in June.
Lisa, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.